Hey everybody, I'm the Ranting Monkey, and today we have a special event for you. Scribe is joining me so we can talk about old movies you should have watched. Say hi, Scribe.
Hi, Scribe.
And today's movie we decided the first one we'd do is Tango and Cash.
Yay!
Yay! Tango and Cash is a 1989 film starring Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone. I should have done their names different because Tango is Sylvester Stallone. Anyway,
Yeah.
and I'm going to start off by saying this to me is a prime example of what a late 80s, early 90s buddy cop movie was.
Yeah, this is one of several that were made in the wake of the success of Lethal Weapon, which came out in 90, I think. What is it? 1987. Sorry, yes, 1987. But did you know, Monkey, that there was a buddy cop movie that had most of the same tropes as Lethal Weapon that came out a year before Lethal Weapon?
What movie?
Running Scared with Billy
Oh,
Crystal and Gregory Hines.
We need to do that one. That is
Yeah, we
one of my
should.
favorite movies. I actually already have it on DVD.
Yeah, so Running Scared predated Lethal Weapon by a year. It also had a buddy cop arrangement of a multiracial cast, if that's important to you.
Mhm.
It also had the sort of situation where something goes kablooey and the chief of police says, "You guys are a pain in my ass," kind of stuff. The only difference being that Running Scared, the two guys already knew each other and liked each other. There wasn't some kind of like competitive tension as most of the buddy cop movies ended up being later on.
Yeah, we'll get to the main story here in a moment. But yeah, in Running Scared, not only do they know each other, they're really good friends. They're almost brothers.
Right.
Yeah, that's an excellent movie, and that's going to be on our list.
Yeah. So you got Lethal Weapon, you've got Running Scared, you've got Tango and Cash. We talked about Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man last night. You've also got, and this is one that I don't hear many people talk about, from 1990, which I believe was, what, 1 year before Tango and Cash? Because that was 91?
Year after.
Year
Tango
after,
and Cash
sorry.
came out in 89.
Right. So 1990, you had The Rookie with Clint Eastwood and Charlie Sheen.
Yes.
Which in Raul Julia, of all people, and it was directed by Clint Eastwood. And I don't know if this was his first directing. I don't think this was his first directing debut or anything, but you don't hear about The Rookie much. And if I remember seeing it in the theater with my dad, and I thought it was pretty good from what I remember.
You know, it wasn't a bad movie. It does have one of my favorite action scenes where they jump the car out of the building. Because it is just so ludicrous. But that's part of the fun of that era of movies. And this Tango and Cash has one of the greatest moments of absolute insanity, and it's how the movie started, actually.
Yes. So tell us how the movie starts, Monkey.
At the beginning of the movie, we see Ray Tango, Sylvester Stallone, chasing what looks like a gas truck.
Yeah, tanker truck.
And there's a police helicopter flying over telling him he needs to back off because he doesn't have jurisdiction where he's at. And he takes off way ahead of the truck.
Amazingly ahead of the truck. Like, there's no way, because by the time he stops and waits for the truck to show up, he's about a mile away from the thing.
Yes.
No way that much time passed. I watched it this morning. I was like, he just teleported. There's no way.
Yeah, he had to been doing like 400 miles an hour to get as far ahead as he was. That, or they condensed this scene and it was actually like 30 minutes long.
Oh, well, after we get past all the main stuff, we'll talk about the production, because holy cow, there's a story behind this movie.
So the officer, Ray Tango, pulls his car sideways to block the truck, and he pulls out his little tiny police shooter.
Now, first, just before we go any further, what the thing that will strike you now, at this point in his career, Sylvester Stallone had done things like Cobra and Rambo. He was known about these like super duper action stripped down movies, but he played against type to a certain extent in this movie.
He really did.
Because you see him in a suit, you see him with glasses. And the thing that I noticed this morning too, when I was watching, I was like, when he pulls out his gun, it is so discongruous in my mind to see Sylvester Stallone holding a snub-nosed 38 compared to everything else he's ever held in an action movie, between giant M16s with rocket launchers and shit.
Well, it looks ridiculous seeing him hold it, actually.
Yeah.
It looks so tiny compared to him. So, but the part that makes this scene the best is he starts shooting at the tanker truck. And they're going to run into, and finally they slam the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
And they slammed the brakes so hard, the driver flew out.
Both of them, the driver and the passenger, flew out of the windshield and landed on the pavement, and somehow they're alive.
I can see the passenger flying out, but the drivers, I mean,
the steering wheel would kind of get in the way.
Yeah, usually, I mean, if the driver's going to be popped out, it's because he hit something. But amazingly, he stops right before he hits Tango's car. And as you said, both of the people in the truck come flying out of the windshield, and they're both basically okay.
Now, did you notice who the driver of the truck was?
That is the chin dude.
Yes, Robert Zadar, a staple of B-movie, tough, heavy, mean guys. Zadar was born with something called cherubim syndrome, which gave him a gigantic jaw.
Mm-hmm.
He has the biggest jaw in the world, and so he got a lot of jobs being a tough or a heavy or a monster or something. And we'll meet him later in the movie too.
Yeah, if you see him, you would think it was a prosthetic. You really would.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is where we first find out Tango's a little bit of a outside of the lines cop.
Right, because his chief shows up and he's like scolding him and everything else. Now, his chief is played by Jeffrey Lewis, who is also a staple of films. And let me make sure I got this right here, because I know he's the father of Juliette Lewis, who's also a actress.
Mm-hmm.
You might have seen, she was in Natural Born Killers and Strange Days. And he played alongside Redford and Eastwood quite a bit in Westerns and things.
Yeah, he was in quite a few Clint Eastwood movies.
Yes.
Next, we see Cash.
No, hold on. We're missing the whole thing about the tanker truck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because so they stop the tanker truck, and the local sheriff guys are pissed off at him, and Mullet Man Sheriff shows up and starts chewing out Tango for not being in the right jurisdiction, shooting at innocent people and everything else. And he says, "I want your badge, I want your job, I want your gun." And then the guys on the top of the tanker truck are checking the truck for something illegal.
Wait. Yep. You just missed a part.
Oh, did I? Yes.
Because the only really quote-worthy part of this whole movie, and they tried to make a lot of quotes, at least in my mind, they didn't nail it very often. The only one that they got right was this guy goes, "You think you're Rambo?" And Clint Eastwood goes,
Clint Eastwood,
Rambo.
Huh? So you said Clint Eastwood, not?
Sorry, Sylvester Stallone, yes. Goes, "Rambo is the pussy."
Yeah, and then he shoots the tanker truck on the lower side, because they were checking the upper section of the tank, but he shoots the bottom side of it, and all of a sudden, all this white powder starts coming out. And it's like, oh, look, it's snowing. And that's why he was trying to stop it, because it was smuggling cocaine, or at least a white powder, presumably cocaine.
Yeah. And then, this actually showcases one of the problems I have with God damn it, I keep saying it, with Sylvester Stallone in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
In that opening sequence, when he's trying to talk all bad like that, he comes off kind of cheesy when he's trying to be.
Yes.
Anytime he's engaged with bad guys, or I do want to give him credit later in the movie, when he has scenes with like Terry Hatcher, he's acts very natural, and those come off very well. But for somebody like Sylvester Stallone to have problems in the action sequences giving his lines just made me laugh.
Yeah, it was just weird.
Yeah, he came off really stiff.
Now, as they're cleaning up the crime scene, traffic is being directed through, and we see this long white limousine go by, and then we cut inside and we meet our villains, so to speak. The main villain, named Perrette, is played by Jack Palance, also a veteran of Westerns and other things, and probably best known by anybody in the modern day as Curly from the City Slickers films.
Yes.
But also, did you note the two other people who are Perrette's underlings in this movie?
I recognize the little Chinese guy, and he was in a lot of these kind of movies too.
Yeah, so that's James Hong, which he was also in Big Trouble in Little China with Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell, yeah.
And the other guy, Mark Alamillo, you may not recognize him without his makeup on, but that is Gul Dukat from Deep Space Nine.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
Yep. And so these two guys are known as Quan and Lopez. And just as a spoiler, these three are the most uninvolved villains in any movie I have ever seen. Because I swear to God, they had Jack Palance in to film for like 2 days, and then he gave his paycheck and walked away because he did nothing in this movie.
Yeah, he didn't. The only part about his involvement in this movie that I liked is at the end, and we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah.
Because the end of this movie deserves its own segment.
And then we transition over to meeting Gabriel Cash. Now, the one thing I also want to point out is just the heavy use, and it is era, appropriate, I suppose, for the film, but the heavy use of synthesizer music in this movie. It's crazy. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, they use the synthesizer synthesizer music for transitions in all kinds of mid to late 80s movies that were action oriented. Beverly Hills Cop was just loaded with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we meet Cash, and he's just driving to his house, and he goes up to his apartment, and while he's in there, somebody tries to kill him.
Yeah, we're shown it's made clear really quickly that we have Tango, who is the suited, glassed, very well crafted cop, and then we have Cash, who is this blue collar, wears a dirty shirt, jeans, boots, and has a crappy apartment guy. So we have this, not even lightly implied class disparity between these two cops. And with newspaper articles, we're shown that they are in some kind of sort of professional competition as to who can bust the most drugs. Because Cash is looking at a newspaper article that shows Tango making the bust of the tanker truck, and then below the fold, there's a story of him grabbing like 200 kilos of cocaine or something. And you can see that this is the first hint of the rivalry is in the way that is presented, because Tango's on top, above the fold, Cash is below it. Yeah, so then he's in his apartment, and he's checking himself out in the mirror, when suddenly through the mirror, I never understood that. It's like, how did you know the guy was there? It's like, why not just open the door? Did you hollow out the other side of the wall or the door or something? It doesn't make any sense.
This is one of the great things about 80s buddy cop movies, is there's so many parts that just don't make any sense. But it still fit in the movie. It really did. If you just watch these as a fun popcorn movie, they're great. You're not going into this for upscale cinema.
I also wanted to note that I don't know if it was intentional, but in a way, the movie is framed with attacks taking place involving mirrors.
Yes, it is.
I'm not trying to get too deep into it. I don't know if there's some symbolism there or something, but it is interesting that. But we'll get to the other mirror part when we get to the movie. But in this first sort of action-ish scene after at least for Cash, he's standing looking at himself in the mirror. Suddenly the mirror explodes outwards, and this Chinese assassin jumps through and starts taking shots at him.
And hits him. He gets shot twice.
Yeah.
But he's wearing his vest, so he's okay. And then he shoots back at him with a nice boot gun.
Yep. The boot gun. The boot gun is cool. You see it like once or twice in the movie, and its origin is explained later, which just makes the movie even more ridiculous by the time we get there. But I loved Cash's gun. It's like this 357 with this gigantic 1980s laser sight doohickey on the top of it. It's so awkward looking. It's like that would make the gun like 7 pounds heavier.
Yeah, the laser sight is like twice as big as the gun. It looks. It's almost like when you see a 1980s cell phone.
Yes.
How big and ridiculous they look. It looks like somebody strapped one of those to his gun. So there's a foot chase. He goes after the assassin. And this leads to the first really ridiculous scene of the whole movie.
Yes.
The car chase in the parking garage.
Oh, man.
Which It's awesome if you enjoy this kind of stuff. Like there's one part, um, the little assassin guy jumps in a truck.
Yep.
And Cash steals a car. He doesn't really steal it. He borrows it from a little Russian immigrant with his Glasnost.
Glasnost, yeah.
Glasnost, yes, thank you. And he even says perestroika. It's like, oh my God, I forgot those words. But he steals the car from that guy, and there's a chase through the parking garage. And there's one part where they're driving down a straightaway, and there's all these overhead lights that are falling for no goddamn reason at all.
Yeah, they just like somebody clicked the wrong button timing on the special effect or something.
It's a great look, but if you like, again, this is one of those movies, if you pay too much attention, you're just like, this makes no goddamn sense.
Oh yeah.
But Cash eventually catches him because he runs another car off of where it's parked in front of the truck that's trying to get away. And does he make a little quip there? I forget.
Yeah.
Oh, so thank you so much, God of Cheese. What's up, Monkey Man? Remember me from Morsky Live when I triggered the fuck out of Andy by saying Chris was better and Spider-Man's a bitch? Love your shit. Glad I was home to donate while you were still live this time. I do remember that, and thank you so much for the donation. Yeah, that was funny. Andy got mad. Told me not to thank you.
Oh, geez. You know, I triggered the fuck out of Andy by saying Chris was better. Oh, I said Spider-Man's a bitch. Okay.
Yeah, he said Chris was the better Worski, and Andy was like, it's funny.
Well, yeah, Cash did get one quip because after he's got the assassin cornered and he's got a gun held on him, the Russian guy runs up because he's angry that Cash stole his car, and he says, "What do you do? You stole my car! I come here to this country, perestroika, glasnost." And Cash just looks at him and says, "Well, welcome to America." And that's where they cut. And then we cut to Tango's office, where we meet his sister, which is also a main plot point in the movie.
We don't know it's his sister.
Well, true. Not at first. Not at first.
They go to great lengths at the beginning of this movie to make you think that she's like his girlfriend or his wife or something.
Yeah.
And you find out later, yeah, it's his sister. But yeah, they really try to sell that point.
And this is Terry Hatcher, who is a baby at this point in her career.
And she was so cute.
I know she yeah, that's what one of the movies that sort of like I think it was the first time I ever saw her in anything. Mm-hmm. She's it's the 80s, so she's wearing like this naval Commodore jacket over lingerie or something. Yes. It's such a great it's so Madonna to me. Every time I saw it, I was like, that reminds me of Madonna for some reason.
She has the really big bushy 80s hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see that very much anymore.
The perm.
Yep. And we learn that she's going away and he's begging her to stay. And we also, this is where we learn that he's really big into finance. He actually has to stop talking to her to take a call from his broker.
Yes. Again, underlying sort of the class disparity, sort of reminding us that, yes, Tango is high class, Cash is low class.
Well, we also kind of see the Beverly Hills Cop effect here because Tango works obviously in like Beverly Hills. They never say that, but he's in a very rich department. Mm-hmm. And then we cut over to Cash again, and he's in the kind of rundown. It's not falling apart, but it's not the posh office that Tango.
Yeah,
had.
It's the other side of the tracks police department.
Yes, and this is where we get a major clue about what's about to happen. Mm-hmm. He sits down at his desk, and for some reason, he has his weapon in his unlocked desk.
Yeah, right.
And he's wondering who messed with the sights on his gun.
Yeah, he pulls it out, and he looks at it, and he's sort of like, he's looking, and he's like, "What? Who's messing with my sights?" And then there's a little bit of a music cue to tell you that something's off, but they don't linger on it too long, and so. Credit where credit is, it was subtle.
It was.
Maybe a bit too subtle, I don't know. But
You and I talked about this the other day. I didn't even realize that was a clue in the movie until maybe a year ago.
Yeah, maybe it was like the second or third time I saw the movie that it clicked for me, but that was years and years ago.
And this is another one of those things with 80s movies. They weren't as worried about getting every detail correct. because no cop in his right mind would leave a fucking gun sitting in an unlocked drawer.
Yeah, there's a lot of details in this movie that they don't get right, but we'll cover them as we go, I'm sure.
Next, he gets up and he sees his captain walking by, and he asks him, you know, say, talking about the assassin, the guy who tried to kill him. And the guy said, captain relays to him that he's claiming he doesn't speak English. They got a translator in there, and he's still refusing to talk. And this is where we get to see, again, the differences between Tango and Cash, where Tango he might skirt the rules a little bit. Cash is not afraid to openly break them.
Yeah, and also this is a scene that probably would not be allowed to be made today. I'm just guessing.
No.
So Cash finds our assassin somehow uncuffed and free to go to the bathroom unaccompanied, it seemed like. I didn't remember.
No, there was a cop in there.
Oh, that's right. There was a cop in there, and he asked. So he
told him to leave.
Cash told him to leave. So then Cash grabs the Chinese guy, throws him on the ground, and then sits a chair, like the little. So if you have a chair turned backwards, like a folding chair, and that little bracer bar that holds the back legs apart, he puts that underneath the guy's neck, and then sits on the chair and leans into it, choking the guy on the floor, trying to get him to talk about what's going on. And of course, the assassin does start blurting out. It's like, oh, look, you can't speak English. Gosh, you're a quick learner. And so he... yes, go ahead.
I say, if I can jump in here, this scene is one of the ones that shows the difference between Kurt Russell, who is an actor, and Sylvester Stallone, who is an action actor.
Yes.
Kurt Russell comes off very natural in all of his scenes.
Yes, he does.
And like when he leans into the guy's throat, the one time he tells him the lessons are going to get harder. I mean, he's openly threatening to harm this guy even further, and it all comes off like it's just who he is. And I want to say Kurt Russell did a really good job in this whole movie.
Well, Kurt Russell, I mean, he's been an actor since he was a kid. I mean, he was in what was it? It Happened at the World's Fair with Elvis Presley back in like '65 or something. So yeah, he's been, and he was like Walt Disney's favorite little actor or whatever. God knows why. And actually, do you know that was the last thing Walt Disney said before he died?
Oh.
He said Kurt Russell's name. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows what he was trying to tell anybody, but his last living words were Kurt Russell.
Maybe it was Kurt Russell sat on my neck.
Who did this to you, Walt? It was Kurt Russell. But Cash,
the assassin relays the information that there's a drug deal going down.
He says there's a deal going down at I even wrote it down, 4249 Front Street. It's very specific. And it doesn't say what it is, what it's about, or anything else. But Cash is just like, hey, great. And then he, I guess just decides to go. And then we kind of cut over to Tango. Oh, yeah.
There's one part here that it's another one emblematic of 80s movies. A cop comes in right at the end of this scene.
Oh, yes, right.
And just kind of looks at her and goes, what's going on in here? And Kurt Russell, English lessons.
It's just... And the guy rolls his eyes and just walks out.
Yep. Like, cool. All right. It's just, a quip. There's so many quips in this movie.
So then we cut back over to Tango, and his chief comes out and tells him, yeah, there's a big bus going down tonight. And Tango says, is it reliable? And the chief says, yeah, it's reliable. It was a phone tap. And like, okay. And so he takes this little slip of paper, and that's kind of, well, that's all that we have to set up that something is about to bring these two characters together, because they both say, 4249 Front Street. So that tells you that they're both going to end up at the same spot.
Yep.
But then we get to meet a little bit more of our villains, because we cut to the giant wall of televisions and Jack Palance watching video footage of his two biggest enemies, Tango and Cash, busting all his drugs. And it is the supervillain hideout you would imagine of a 1980s action movie.
Yes.
Because, so Jack Palance is lording it over this wall of television screens, and we have Lopez and Quan, his two guys, who we find out through exposition. Quan runs the East Side, and Lopez runs the West Side. Again, I'm not giving you any less information the movie gives us about these guys. This is just who they are and what they do, I guess, because we see these guys in all of like 4 scenes in the entire movie. And this is all they do. They just chat with each other, except until the very end when something does happen.
Well, yeah. Is this the scene where they talk about the plan?
Sort of, because Quan and Lopez are, or like Jack Palance says, or Perret says something to the effect of, you two are always wondering, or probably wondering why we just don't kill them. And they're like, oh yeah.
They ask, why don't we just kill them?
Why don't we just kill them? He's like, oh, well, you don't want to make them martyrs. If you kill them, then they, what you have to do is try to destroy them. You have to try to completely undercut their reputations and make them into, fools and everything else. So we're not going to kill them. We're going to, we're going to do something worse to them. We're going to, destroy them.
Which is another one of the 80s tropes.
Yes.
Rarely did bad guys just kill somebody when they had the chance.
No, it's usually framing for a crime they didn't commit, or otherwise setting them up for something else in order to discredit them and put them, let the system deal with them so they don't have to have blood on their hands, more or less. And then the thing that always made Jack Palance's character stick out to me from most other bad guys were the rats.
Yes,
he has this intricate, polished, like Chinese box that is pulled out, and inside are 2 rats, and he holds them up and he's like, oh, you're so beautiful, Tango and Cash. And then he walks his 2 henchmen over to a bar table that is a rat maze. It is an enclosed rat maze where you can sit there and have your drinks while you look down through the plastic or the glass or whatever to watch the rats run around in this maze, and he puts them into this little maze, and then he's like, they just start laughing like evil villains, like, ah, ha, ha, ha. Yes. And it was just like, and I was like, what the fuck? But again, sort of like The Mirror, this imagery comes back to us by the end of the movie. I won't say what yet, we'll get there. But eventually we do have 2 rats in a maze to a certain extent.
Yes.
So, to the writers or the directors or the photographers' credit, there is some visual symbolic mirroring, no pun intended, going on in this movie.
Yeah, the only problem with it is that this movie has so much going on with it.
Yes.
That unless you watch it a few times and are actually paying attention, it doesn't really hit you.
No.
Which is fine, but
it's a wasted effort. Is what it is. It is a wasted effort, but yeah, it's only on like a couple of viewings do you sort of see these parallels going on. But again, that's giving a movie like this way too much artistic credit. But at the same time, though, it was something that was done, and the old saying goes, an artist, well, except for maybe Jackson Pollock, an artist doesn't put a spot of paint on a canvas unintentionally.
Right,
so.
Right.
If there's something in the movie and you notice it after a while, then somebody meant for it to be there in some capacity. So just giving credit where credit is due.
So Tango and Cash end up both showing up at the intended spot, and we see a long-haired dude who turns out to be British. We don't know that at this time.
Yes, this is. And now, do you know who this actor is?
I've seen him in things. I don't know his name.
So this is Brian James. To the nerds of the world, he's probably best known for playing Leon Kowalski, the first of the runners we see in Blade Runner. Okay. He's one of the first synths, or whatever you call them, that you see. He's the one that's being given the test and pulls out the gun and shoots the guy at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
He also, he was in 48 Hours. He was in Another 48 Hours. He was in Red Heat. And he played Bruce Willis's boss, or I guess commanding officer, in The Fifth Element. So he was all over the place. And he only just passed away a couple of years ago, actually. I think
I didn't know he died.
Yeah, he sorry, no, it was in 1999. Sorry, it was actually not that long, just within a decade after this movie was made, and he died of a heart attack. He wasn't that old. He was only 54. So yeah, he passed away.
Yeah, 40 in chat. 48 Hours was legit. Yeah, we could probably do 48 Hours too. That was such a good movie.
And he's not British. Just to make it clear, he was an American actor doing a British accent. And I'm really curious if any British viewers of ours have seen Tango and Cash and can give a a rating on his attempt at doing a Cockney accent.
There's actually, in one of the scenes where he talks, he breaks his accent.
Yes, this is true.
Anyhow, so he's wandering around this warehouse. You see him carrying a briefcase. Tango has seen him. I don't think Cash ever saw him.
No, Cash was led there just on the suspicion of stuff, and so he just starts staking out the building while Tango is trailing Ponytail, as they call him for most of the movie. Yeah.
And Ponytail disappears. Tango and Cash end up running into each other. Mm-hmm. And we have the line that was played in all of the commercials back in the day.
Yeah.
Where Sylvester Stallone looks at Kurt Russell and says, "I hear you're the second best cop in LA." And Kurt Russell says, "Yeah, I heard the same thing about you." And we see that the rivalry once again.
Well, there's also another line, which I love even better than that one, because they start arguing about whose case it was. Like, this is my case.
Yes.
And then Sylvester Stallone, Tango goes, "I've been on this case for 3 months." And Cash goes, "Well, I've been on this case for like half an hour, and we end up at the same place."
Yes. We're at the same place.
And yeah, and Kurt Russell is just such, God, he is such a great, I mean, he's like the thing that holds this movie together in a lot of places, because his natural delivery of lines and just his nod and a wink every time that he says something just makes everything he does just a joy to see, practically. So
I've always been surprised they never made a sequel to this, but I'm even more surprised that he never got his own action franchise. He's not built like an action star, which is probably part of it. But he is such a great comedic actor in that way, where he does the serious with like you said, the wink and a nod.
Well, the reason, just as a brief, we won't get too deep into this. I'll get into the production stuff later. The reason why this movie probably didn't get a sequel is because it only made $13 million above its budget. Or actually even less than that, I take it back, less than $10 million above its budget. And when you talk about marketing and everything else, it's probably even less than that. And with the production problems, which we'll get into later, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why this never became a franchise.
Well, I think of movies like, if you watch the original Lethal Weapon, it was not the best movie ever made.
No.
But it set up great characters who were able to be used again. And that's what I always was wondering why they never did with Tango and Cash. It's the same question I've had about The Last Boy Scout. I mean,
that one especially, man, such a great flick.
For you guys who are interested, next week we'll be doing The Last Boy Scout over on, we're doing that on your channel, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be doing that on Scribe's channel next week. So tune in for that one. So here's where things really get interesting. Tango and Cash come into a room and there's a guy there, and they're both telling freeze, don't move. And then Cash realizes the guy's dead. Mm-hmm. The feds break in and arrest them.
Well, hold on before we get to there. So the guy's dead. They check him and they see that he's wired.
Yes.
And they start going like, why is this guy wired? And there's like a briefcase on the table with money, and we then, as they're talking, we cut to, we don't see who's in charge of it yet, but we see a little tape recorder going off, recording them as they're talking to each other in the room. Mm-hmm. Then we cut back to them in the room, and then all of a sudden the doors bust in, and like 50 federal agents, like enough guys, like a small army, bust into this room. And they're like, freeze! And they find out that this guy was a federal agent, and they think that Tango and Cash killed him, and this was the deal.
And Cash's gun is on the floor.
Yes.
The one with the infamous sights that are off.
Yeah, well, no, this is the one whose sights aren't off, because it's actually Cash's gun. The one that was put in his drawer was a duplicate. That's why he knows the sights are off. Yeah, so this is his gun, and so they claim they have him dead to rights. Now, of course, as I'm watching the movie this morning, I'm thinking, if all of those cops were within a stone's throw of this building, then they all saw those two guys show up apart and alone and know that the timing doesn't work for how this went down.
Yeah, a whole bunch of people had to be in on the setup.
Yeah. So they arrest Tango and Cash, and then we cut over. Now, this is important to remember. We cut over to a guy sitting in a car with the tape recorder, the guy who was the agent recording the person who had the wire. Somebody walks up to him, it's Ponytail, I believe, and hands him the real recording, and hands him like a different audio tape. And the guy in the car, just for those who care, hold on a second, where to go? The actor's name is, where is it? Brock Smith? Oh yeah, Roy Brock Smith. Now, you don't know the name. You'd probably know the face, though, because if you ever watched Total Recall, the moment at which the psychiatrist shows up in the movie that is trying to convince Quaid that he's actually in a dream, and Quaid like notices that there's sweat coming down the side of his head and then shoots him in the face. Same actor. He is, I mean, the way you see him in Tango and Cash, you'd think he'd be important. And what they say about him later, you would think he'd be important. But we'll get to that. That was one of the biggest plot holes in the whole movie to me. That we'll get to later. So anyway, so a real tape is handed to the agent who's supposedly recording what happened in the room. And if they'd actually used what was recorded in the room, they'd figure out really quick, Tango and Cash didn't kill this guy. So then, yeah, we have the 50 cops. And then, let's see, what happened next? Oh, yeah. So then we cut almost immediately to the court scene.
Yes, to the trial. They went to trial very fast.
Really fast. Really fast. And we get a montage of testimony against them.
Including somebody verifying that the tape is real.
Yes, and that person, hold on, that was Michael Jeter. And Michael Jeter, for those of you who are old enough to remember, he was in The Fisher King. He was in Waterworld. And he was also on the TV show Evening Shade, if you ever saw Evening Shade. And he was a relatively well-liked actor. And he died of AIDS, I think, he died of AIDS in 2003. So, yeah. Or no, sorry, he had HIV. He might have died of an epileptic seizure. Okay. Anyway, so he testifies that the audio is authentic and that this tape that they play the tape in the court, and it's by all rights it says, you know, like, oh, they showed up and they talked to this agent and then they decided to kill him.
Yeah, it makes it sound like they purposefully killed him so that they could take the drugs and money.
Yeah, something like that. But that was the deal or something. And then sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, then the next person to testify is the person that was sitting outside who was recording the sound from the wire. And he's sitting up there and he testifies that he saw Tango and Cash go into the building together and that they looked like they were there for trouble and everything else. And then one of my favorite lines between Tango and Cash in this thing is that I think, Cash leans over to Tango and says, you know, after this is over with, I say we go visit Jabba the Hutt here with a chainsaw. And Tango says, I'll bring the beer.
Yes. They made a similar, or not a similar statement, but another joke statement like that with the guy who authenticated the sound recording.
Oh, yes.
They did it throughout the whole trial. And again, another 80s thing, just your two stars cracking jokes, even though, you know.
Now, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that I was alluding to earlier, though. This character who was recording the sound and everything, and even though they made this line about chainsaws and visiting with beer and everything, we never see this character again.
Yeah.
They never meet him again. We never see him in the movie again. They go and visit other characters involved in the plot later on after they have an opportunity to try to track down who did this to them. We never see this guy again. I thought, hey, that was very disappointing because as I was watching the movie this morning, I was kind of like, we never do. Wow. He just gets away with it. Okay.
Well, I wonder if that's a scene that got cut.
I think it must have. I think it must have.
Because we do see them visit everyone else that they say they're going to.
Right.
The next scene we see is Ray being told, that Ray Tango, that he needs to cut a deal.
Yes.
You should probably cut a deal. And he says, I want to talk to Cash. And so the two of them talk and they agree. Yeah, they're going to take 18 months in minimum security prison.
Yeah, Lompoc Country Club, they call it.
Yep. And they have a little argument about who's going to make a statement before the court.
Right.
And there's a silly little exchange there where Cash is asking Tango when his birthday is, and Tango tells him it's in May. Cash goes, mine's in February. I go first.
Seniority.
I have seniority, so I'll make the statement. And Tango goes, what is it?
August 16th.
August 16th. And Cash stops and goes, what? He goes, August 16th, Cash. I read your file. I have seniority. And so he gives a statement. And they cut back to the court, and the judge asks, do you guys agree to this? And Tango gets up and he makes a very eloquent statement, not addressing the crime at all, just saying, giving love to the boys in blue, saying every cop he's ever worked with is great, and hopes that this doesn't diminish the department. And he sits down. And the judge asks, Cash, do you have a statement? Yes, I do. And it's another great part where we see the difference between the two characters, because he stands up and he goes, Tango gave a great speech, and he goes, I wish I could be that forgiving, but this is bullshit. And he just starts on.
He says, this fucking sucks. And everybody's like, yeah!
Sucks. That's what it is. The courtroom erupts, and it's a great scene. And then we see then we cut to them going to prison.
Yeah, they're in a prison transport truck, and there's about 2 seconds of them chatting together when the doors open up, and they're not at a country club. They're at a giant, like, gray stone, hardcore prison.
They're at a maximum security prison.
Maximum security prison, and they're like, well, what the fuck is going on here? And we have somewhere in there, we have a quick scene between the two captains of these guys going like, where are they? We don't know where they went. And like, how, I mean, the entire planet in this little universe must be corrupt for this to happen and work the way it does. And this is a theme throughout the entire movie. The only way any of this happens is if everybody except our heroes are completely corrupt and working entirely against their best legal interests every 2 seconds.
Yes.
So they're put into prison, and we immediately cut to butts, shower butts.
Yes. The two of them walking naked away from this. Yeah, at least they was away from the camera.
Yeah, thank God for that. But yeah, we see the masterful physiques of these two men. And it was also interesting to me because usually it is a rare day, and I have to wonder, honestly, it is a rare day that Sylvester Stallone will allow an opportunity for anyone to know how short he is.
Right, yeah.
So I can't recall right now, but I have to wonder if the view we see of Tango up until the point where we actually cut to his face isn't a body double.
Either way, gay men and straight ladies out there, if you want to see some nicely sculpted butts, definitely go check out that part of the movie.
Yeah, and then we have a conversation with them in the shower where somehow they're allowed to shower by themselves and there's no other priserners around and
no guards.
No guards.
Just the two of them.
And then
there is an important part there because Kurt Russell makes the statement he thinks they're going to be put into general population.
Right, which cops almost never are.
Right, they're put into protective, or in this case they should have been in the minimum security prison anyway.
Yeah.
And sure enough,
or at least in isolated custody, if nothing else.
Sure enough, we see them heading straight into the regular cell blocks.
Oh well, there's a great line with them in the shower real quick before we get there, and that's at one point Cash drops the soap.
Oh yes.
And Tango goes, "What are you doing?" And Cash like stops, bends back over. He says, "Relax, soap, and don't flatter yourself."
Yes.
And he says, "Pee-wee."
There's a couple times they take shots at each other's junk in this movie.
Yeah, and so the Pee-wee joke will come back. It will be echoed later near the end of the movie, as so many other things are. Yeah, and then we go to Gen Pop, where like the entire place is on fire with shit being thrown off.
Nobody's trying to put out any of the fires.
No,
there's fire all around them.
Yeah, it's just a hellscape. It just.
And this is where we run back into Chin Boy.
Yes.
He's apparently in this prison, and he's talking shit to Tango as Tango and Cash are walking towards their cells, and he threatens him, and Tango reaches in, grabs him by the back of the head, and slams his face into the bars.
Yeah.
This movie has so many just ridiculous things that would never happen in real life, and honestly, that's what I liked about 80s movies is they're believable enough that you can enjoy it. They're not, just absolutely retarded.
Well,
But it's believable
Tango,
enough that you can go, yeah, that would be great to see in real life.
yeah, Tango and Cash, though, when you put it up against, say, Lethal Weapon, in
Yeah,
relative terms, Tango and Cash is an absolute cartoon
it
compared
is.
to Lethal
Yes.
Weapon. But that also is part of its charm, because if you can believe the elevated sense of hyper reality of the situation and set it aside, suspension of disbelief, you can enjoy it. If you can't, then you get the nitpickiness like I did this morning, still enjoying it because it is part of my sort of like glorified childhood, but also being a bit more critical with a more mature eye, I suppose.
I think as I watched it the last, because it took me 3 times to watch this. I fell asleep both of the first times because I was incredibly exhausted. I probably shouldn't have even tried watching. And both times I got up to the scene on the roof, which we'll get to in a few minutes, and fell asleep. And then I finished watching it today, and I actually enjoyed it more now than I did when I was younger.
Okay.
Because as we've talked about before, I miss 80s movies. I miss movies like this where it's just silly fun.
Right.
Because nothing like this could ever happen in real life, ever.
No.
Whether it's the shooting the tanker truck, whether it's the trial that happens the day after they're arrested, apparently. None of this shit happens like this, but it's still just such a good time.
Yeah, I mean, they do make movies kind of like this now, but they're so like The Other Guys. You get like some kind of movie where you get like you take 2 actors, put them together, and it is a cartoon. It's not even attempting to try to reside in anything like reality. So it's not an 80s movie. It's like a satire of an 80s action movie. It's really weird. And it's kind of sad because either you're going to have some deep, gritty Training Day sort of situation, which is also a quote unquote buddy cop movie if Christopher Nolan made a buddy cop movie. And then you have something like The Other Guys or Secret Service or whatever those things are with like The Rock and pairing them up together and that kind of deal.
Yeah, but those ones, even like the latest 21 Jump Street movies, they just go to the goofy extreme. This movie was still presented as though it's plausible.
They played it straight-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then we meet. They're in the prison.
Yeah, so then we meet one of my favorite characters, Slinky. Slinky, played by Clint Howard, Ron Howard's brother, who has been in everything and I believe always has some bit part in every one of his brother's movies. So I'm really curious to see who he's going to play in Han Solo. Now that it's a Ron Howard movie.
He could play Yoda. He kind of looks like him.
So Slinky is Tango's cellmate, and we call him Slinky because he's got a slinky, and he keeps smashing it together and going around everything as Tango's trying to read his Financial Times or whatever. And he points to a little article on the wall. He says, "See that guy? I killed him." And Tango's like, He says, he was my best friend. Crazy people aren't afraid of anything. And Tango's like, aha. And then he throws the slinky over the paper and pulls it down and rips the paper in half, which
destroys it.
I thought, I hope that was improvised because that whole thing was just too perfect. Oh man, it's so funny. But Slinky will come back to haunt our nightmares briefly later on.
Well, for the next part of this, they introduce you to Cash's cellmate. It's a cute little scene, but there's
Yeah.
The next important part is the two of them getting abducted from their cells.
Yes, they get grabbed and pulled out, and then we just before that though we pan up from Tango's bunk to see that Slinky has been tied to his bunk with the slinky like wrapped around him and his hands all tied up, and it looks ridiculous. And then they get pulled out of the cell, and you just see Slinky with this insane look on his face. He's like, "Kill him! Kill him! Yes. Kill the motherfucker!" It's so great.
It is. That is my favorite part of the the whole opening jail sequence is Slinky being tied to his bed with the slinky.
Slinky.
So they get taken to the boiler room.
Yeah.
Where a whole bunch of people show up, a whole bunch of bad guys, including Chin, Ponytail, and Jack Palance shows up.
Yeah. The mysterious man whose What he does, why he's doing it, we never find out really, except that these two guys bust his drug deals.
Yeah.
And he stays in shadow the whole time. And so they start, they try to get away, and they have this giant fight in the middle of the boiler room.
Another 80s thing. There are like 50 people and just Tango and Cash, and they actually hold out for quite a while.
Now, do you know that this movie was made, or at least was in production, after Sylvester Stallone's movie Lockup?
No.
So Sylvester Stallone had already just had an entire movie's experience of having action scenes in prisons. I found it kind of odd that it was just like going from a Lockup movie to another jail-ish movie, or at least a movie that's got a jail scene in it. So it just seemed kind of like, But so they have this giant like mass fist fight using, it's the boiler room. It's also the laundry room, because at one point he smashes a guy's face through a laundry machine's window.
Yeah, yeah.
And but eventually they get overpowered, and the two of them, and then we cut to them being chained up above buckets of water.
And we have a throwback to Lethal Weapon here.
Exactly.
Actually.
Yeah, with an electrocution scene, though not nearly as brutal, because the Lethal Weapon one was like very personal, very in your face kind of thing. This one's sort of like a gladiatorial scene where the two guys are trussed up, everybody's surrounding them. Ponytail pulls this giant electric cable out of the wall, and they walk over and they slowly lower Cash into the thing, and he gets electrocuted, and Tango's like, Cash, and then Tango gets lowered in, and he gets electrocuted, and Cash is like, Tango. And you get this sort of like this bonding moment where they're being tortured together and everything. And then, even though this entire prison would have had to have been paid off, even though the entire state and FBI and everybody else has been in on this somehow to make all this happen, well, the prison guards bust in, along with apparently like the deputy warden or something.
Yes, he's the deputy warden.
Yeah, the deputy warden pops in, and they save these guys. And all the prisoners are sent away, somehow not also being either shot or rearrested or something else.
Not only that, Jack Palance and Ponytail
disappear. Yeah, they disappear. Just able to get away.
So the guards came in to save them, but let all the people who were torturing them get away.
Now, there is one line in here that I do want to. It happens slightly earlier than this, but this is where we meet Ponytail for the first time. We hear him talk, and he's got his razor out, and he's holding it up to, and he's threatening Tango and Cash. And Cash says, and I'm slightly paraphrasing here. He says, "I don't want to be killed by this limey jerk off. I want to be killed by an American jerk off." It's just like I love it. It's just so good.
He goes, "If you're gonna kill me. Just don't let him do it."
Yeah. So they have the super fight. They have electrocution. Then the cops suddenly appear, and then we see Cash and Tango like away and like safe for the moment in their blood-stained, wife beater shirts, somehow surviving being electrocuted in a bucket of water.
Yeah, and not just this isn't like a 9-volt battery. This is a heavy-duty cable. This is there was that they survived is amazing.
And then we find out that the deputy warden is Cash's old commanding officer from way back when.
His first CO.
His first CO, just coincidentally. And the CO immediately tells them, they're going to kill you. You need to escape. And he's already got a plan.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the blueprints. He's got everything they need to know. He's going to get them on the right work detail. Everything. It's all just right there. And Tango asks, how can we trust this guy? Which is, given everything else that's happened to this point, a relevant question.
It is. The only thing is, he's the reason they didn't die in that first scene there.
Yes.
So, I mean, I understand him being skeptical.
Yes.
But I think you got to go with him. But he decides not to.
Yeah.
He when the time comes for them to go to their work detail, Tango goes, you know what? I'm not doing this. So Cash goes out on his own to follow the plan that his former CO drew up for him.
Yeah.
Which includes, for some reason, having to bust through a wall.
So this is something else that I noticed, and this has got nothing to do with anything that could have been planned. I just found it interesting that he breaks away from his work detail. He runs over to the wall, picks up a crowbar that's sitting there. A crowbar, for those of you out there who are super nerds, that has a silver hook and a red handle. The first thing I thought of was, oh my God, did Tango and Cash inspire Half-Life?
Oh yeah.
I was like, did Tango, because he uses this crowbar to bust through a wall. I mean, it is a multi-tool in this thing. He uses it to bust through a wall, to lock a door behind him when he's being chased by the cops and everything. I just thought, but I digress.
So
yeah,
he's making his escape, and sure enough, somebody's ratted on him or found out, and cops and Chin Boy come after him.
Oh, wait. There's one thing, though. So part of the escape plan means he has to go through a giant circulation fan that has been turned off so he can get through it.
Yes.
And so he goes through that, and he's about to get up to the escape door when he suddenly sees his old CO slide down his throat cut.
Yes.
And so his old CO, Matt, he apparently wasn't in on it or anything, because now he's dead. And then all of a sudden the fan starts back up again, and Cash has to brace the little panel door behind him with the crowbar, where the guards are being led by Chin Guy. The prison guards are being led by Chin Guy and a couple of dogs.
This is the most corrupt prison in the entire United States.
It really is. It's like, how the fuck?
But
so anyways, yeah.
This is something that jumped out to me, and I know it shouldn't, but because of all the social justice stuff I cover, not a single black prisoner.
No,
there are no black people in this prison. It's all white people. This was before Bill Clinton came to office. So
I could be mistaken, and somebody can correct me, or I can go back and look. But when they first get into Gen Pop and they're doing sort of the pass by of all the cell doors with guys yelling at them,
was there one black guy?
There's at least one black guy, I believe, that is yelling at them that he's going to kill them.
Point being, 90% of this prison is white.
Yes, it's true, which is obviously just out of proportion with reality.
Oh, you're right. Somebody, how do you say that? Okay, native. Yeah. Cash's cellmate was black. You are correct.
Oh, yes. Duh. Of course. Yes.
Yeah, we only see him for 30 seconds, but you're right. Yes, he was.
And he farts.
Yes.
So the fan turns back on, and so now Cash has got the guards, the dogs, and Chin Guy behind him, and he's got two giant fans that are going to chop him in half, and he's holding on by this crowbar, which his hands are sliding down. And so eventually he can't hold on. He slides down the little path, but he positions himself right between the two fans and the little separator piece. But he's trapped. He's got nowhere to go. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Tango appears with a giant pipe, slams it somehow into this huge industrial fan, and stops it.
Yeah. This is not only the most corrupt prison, it is the worst prison.
Yeah.
There's just giant pipes and crowbars laying around everywhere, apparently.
And there's this one really throwaway moment in there where, like, he stops the fan and one of the blades snaps off and swishes up into the air, and Cash makes this sort of like hands up sort of a defensive posture as it flies up and hits a pipe, and its steam starts coming out. And I just thought it had nothing to do with anything. It was just so weird, but it's always one of the things I remember because it's just so odd, visual. But then Tango's holding this thing, and Cash gets out from behind it. Tango lets it go. The fan goes back up, and now Chin and the guards have nowhere to go, and they run back down a different hallway, the long way. Because this was foreshadowed, because when they were looking at the blueprints, Tango's like, well, "Why don't we go this way?" And the Matt guy says, "No, don't go the long way." So they do have an alternate route out of this place.
So yeah, they take off on their alternate route and end up on the roof.
Yes.
Where there's another great line. They, for some reason, have to walk through Transformers.
Not Autobots and Decepticons.
No. Electrical Transformers. And yes. I believe it's Tango who makes the comment, "I hate electricity."
Yeah.
Because I don't know why they have to shimmy around this, why they can't go walk around.
I think it's fenced out or something.
It's another one of those things for an 80s movie. They did it just for that scene. They forced them through this.
Well, they forced them through it as a setup for the scene that happens about 2 seconds after.
they realize their only way to escape is to jump to a power line, then use their belts to slide down and escape to freedom. Cash says to Tango, I owe you one. I'll let you go first.
Well, they have this little this little conversation where he's like, okay, Cash is like, so if you're only touching one wire and you're not touching the ground, you won't be electrocuted. And then Tango looks at him and Cash says, right? and Tango says, I don't know. Right? It's like, and so he's like, oh shit. So he puts his belt in his teeth so he has his hands free. And he runs, Cash runs, jumps, grabs onto the wire, isn't electrocuted, wraps his belt around it, and he zips down.
Yep.
And then
Tango's, it was a really cool scene. It really is.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, the editing for each of these guys, when they do get to the wire, they have this one quick cut where you see them jumping, and you see that's the actor doing the jumping, at least probably onto a airbag for the scene that they're doing. But anyway, it's really well done. And then Tango tries to do it, but he's stopped because a chain wraps around his
literally tripped up.
Yes, a giant trident hooked chain wraps around his leg. And who is it? But the mini boss. It's mini boss Chin. Now, how Chin got to the roof and somehow avoided the Transformers while carrying a giant chain with a trident hook on it, I don't know. But he's there.
Even weirder, none of the guards that had been with him are with him anymore.
Exactly.
It's just him.
So Chin has Tango. The chain is wrapped around Tango's leg, and Chin is pulling him, and of course Chin is facing away from the Transformers. And Tango reaches out, and with his super duper Rambo strength, is able to unhook the chain from the hook, and then the slack let go, and Chin Boy falls backwards and arms over all the cords on either side of the Transformer and gets completely electrocuted and has one of the best death screams.
Yes.
I remember from my childhood, because it's like, oh, he's just like this. It's so over the top and great.
So they then Tango makes his escape the same way that Cash did. And when they meet up, they decide that they're going to go their separate ways, and they wish each other well and be safe. And he tells them, if you ever need me, go to, I forget if he gives them the club or the address or what.
He says go to the Cleopatra Club.
Yeah.
And
ask for Catherine. And then they go their separate ways.
Yep.
And this is where the movie gets a little more fun. I actually love the movie up until this point. It's actually it's fun up until this point. But past this is when it just gets into the absurd.
Yes, absolutely absurd.
So we see, is Tango first?
No, so we immediately go from here to where we go to the Los Angeles Police Department Q branch.
Yes. Okay.
So apparently in the Cash immediately goes to a lot. So remember, these two guys were on trial. They were the most famous cops in LA. And Cash immediately goes to a Los Angeles Police Department facility, for lack of a better phrase, which is, there's no other way of putting it. It is Q branch for these two characters, because we have our character Owen, who is Q for these guys. And Owen,
for those of you who don't know who Q is, it's a James Bond reference. Q makes all of James Bond's gadgets.
Yes, it is. Q stands for quartermaster, and he was the guy that always supplied James Bonds with all of his fancy gizmos and weaponry and everything else. This takes it to a ridiculous 80s movie extreme, because the weapons. We'll get to the RV of hell pretty soon, but I just want to point out that Owen, our weapons expert Q guy, is played by Michael J. Pollard. And if you don't know who Michael J. Pollard is, he was probably best known for being in the film Bonnie and Clyde with who am I thinking of? God damn it. Dick Tracy. Why am I suddenly forgetting his name? Warren Beatty. Sorry, Warren Beatty. But also for the super nerds. Michael J. Pollard played the oldest of the children on the Star Trek episode Miri, where it's a planet that was controlled by nothing but children. primarily because Michael J. Pollard was born very short, and so he looked like he was a child up through his 20s, so he could pull that off. But in this, he's just kind of this quirky, weird guy who's kind of snickering and giggling the whole time. And he's like, "Hey, Cash, you want a gun? You want a big gun? I got a gun for you." He's almost like a tag-along little brother or something.
He was annoying in this film.
I kind of liked him when I didn't find him annoying. I mean, I was used to it by now. I love the movie, so I just kind of saw it coming. I kind of find him as one of like the endearing parts of how cheesy this movie is.
Yeah. At this point, he's not so bad. When we get to the RV, he's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, the RV's a bit much. But we see an exploding guard dog.
Yes.
I mean, he's like, "Hey, Cash, you want to see this? It's for a senior citizen home protection." And you see this like stuffed animal, like Doberman Pinscher, sitting there, and all of a sudden the mouth opens up and you see like a gun barrel, and then the head explodes, and you've got this cartoon where the tubes peeled back into a star frame kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's just
the best part about this scene though is that Cash goes there for guns, and this is the cue that you're talking about, but he just walks away with like regular guns.
Yeah, he gets like a shotgun, a pistol, but he does grab another pair of his gun boots.
Yes, he does.
Which is important because that comes up very much later. So yeah, we did Q-Batch. Then we do Tango's thing. Oh, sorry. Tango goes to the house of the FBI chief agent guy.
Yeah. The one who was the lead that busted in on them the dead guy.
Mm-hmm.
He interrogates him. The guy gives up the name. I'm going to go through these kind of quick because they're not really interesting scenes. In my opinion, if there's something you want to talk about, make sure you do.
Yeah.
But Tango interrogates him. Then we see Cash go to the
guy tries to get away, and then he opens up his car door and explodes, and he dies.
Oh yeah.
And I assume somewhere in here is where the scene would have been with one of them going off to Jabba the Hutt.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't happen.
So then we see Cash interrogating the guy who did the sound authentication.
No, first actually, Oh, wait, was it? Oh, did I not write that down? You're right. I didn't. Yes, the sound authentication thing. That's right.
Yep.
I forgot to write that down.
It's right after that.
Yes,
that
it is.
That he decides he's going to go see Catherine.
Right. Yeah, he goes to the guy who did the audio. He finds out that the guy is the audio guy is the one who actually made the fake tape and was the guy who authenticated his own work. And then Cash finds the tape that has the proof. This is the big thing that's going to prove their innocence. He's got the tape. But then he says something like, "It's amazing you're able to do all this stuff with as crappy equipment as you've got." And the guy's like, this is state-of-the-art equipment. And then he's like, swings the shotgun back and forth, just shooting the equipment to pieces with the shotgun, which is amazing. I always remember that part too. That motion of him just swinging the shotgun back and forth and loading it every time.
Next is when he went to see Catherine, right?
Yes, at the Cleopatra Club.
Yeah, so he goes there to get in touch with Ray, and he asks for Catherine. Nobody knows her, and then Kiki comes on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Kiki is Catherine. That's Terry Hatcher doing a little striptease.
Well, the most PG-rated striptease you've ever seen.
It's so sad.
She's wearing she's wearing a sparkly bra, but she's got like these silver leggings on, and she kind of does a those assistants in magician shows.
Yeah,
she does sort of like a David Copperfield magician's assistant sort of dance around, and then she has to grab drumsticks because part of her show is hitting on like MIDI drums or something.
Yeah, she plays drums in her strip. Yeah, it's like, just show her boobs. That's what everybody's here for. Yeah, anyway, exactly. This is the second time we see boobs in the film because he ends up going backstage and there's a woman walking around topless. Thank you, 80s. Thank you, 80s. Now,
yeah, the first time we saw boobs,
we missed this. We missed it, and it's actually so emblematic of 80s films, and I'm disappointed in us for skipping over this.
Well, you were on a tear, and I just kind of let you go. I was going to talk about it. It's okay.
Yeah. Interrupt me if I do that. Yeah. Okay. Back in the scene where we had the guy trying to assassinate Cash, when they get into the parking garage, and all of the commotion starts happening. This couple pops out of a car. Well, they pop up in the car. They've obviously been having sex in it. And you just get to see her titties for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, thank you, 80s film.
Yes,
I appreciate you.
It had nothing to do with anything. It was just one more little piece of world building.
Yeah. Look, titties. And you can never go wrong with titties. That's what I say. So Tango eventually meets Catherine, finds out her nickname is Kiki.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells him, yeah, I can, or I haven't, she tells him she hasn't seen Ray. But they end up going back to her apartment. Now, this is one of the great moments of this film is they have to sneak out because the police have showed up and they're looking for Cash.
How they know that he's there, who knows?
Yeah, nobody ever explains that. But again, this is an 80s movie. You don't need an explanation.
Right.
In order to get out of the club, Kurt Russell goes full drag.
Yes.
And he is one ugly woman.
He is. But he is, you know, as I'm watching, I'm thinking to myself, I bet Kurt Russell loved doing this.
Yeah.
He looked like he was having a blast.
It's so serious and even hit on the cop a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. And then so she, first off, she comes out with a big biker's helmet on and a jacket. And then for some reason they stop her, even though she is tiny. She could not possibly be a grown man.
Yeah.
But they stop her and take the helmet off like, oh, it's a woman. And then she gets on a motorcycle. And then Kurt Russell comes out, total drag, which would have taken like an hour and a half to do, but they somehow do it in like 5 minutes or something. Well, whatever. Again, 80s movie. But then he gets, Terry Hatcher looks back as they're all like swooning over Kurt Russell in drag. And she says, hey, get away from my property.
Yes.
And he gets on the back of the bike. And this cop that had been ogling her or whatever, he then puts on his sunglasses and then pushes them up his nose with a middle finger as they drive away, which it's just so great.
And then we cut to them on her couch.
Mm-hmm.
She's giving him a back rub.
Yep.
And this is one of the parts that I have to laugh at every time I've seen it. Even back then, I knew this was a problem. My dad had slipped a disc in his back when he was carrying a fire hose he shouldn't have been carrying by himself. Because they're quite heavy.
Yeah.
You can't just push a disc back in.
No.
Terry Hatcher's rubbing his back, and she mentions this bump in his back or something, and he's talking about this disc that has slipped out, and she's going to put it back in.
Yeah.
If it were that easy, I wouldn't have had 2 surgeries. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But we see them, and they cut to where we're looking behind the sofa, and we just see Terry Hatcher because Clint Eastwood. Why do I keep calling him that? Sylvester Stallone has come in, and we're seeing it from his perspective now.
Yes.
And it sounds very dirty. She's talking about slipping it in, and he's going harder.
It's like, I can feel it. I can feel it. It's almost inside.
It's almost in.
It's almost in.
It is so cheese. It is so dumb.
It is so bad.
But Sylvester Stallone sees somebody outside a glass door. He grabs a duck, a wooden duck, something that it's a decoration, jumps through the window and tackles the guy.
Oh, no. I have to correct you. He doesn't see somebody through a glass door. He sees somebody through the screen door. He jumps through the screen door, knocks this person down. And so he's holding him down underneath this crushed screen door.
Yes.
And it's his police captain. And the captain says, Ray, is this how you screen all your guests?
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, God. It's so bad.
This is another problem with 80s movies. His sister's house, if he escaped from jail, would have been under constant surveillance.
Exactly.
His only known living relative, and apparently only his police captain thought to look there.
Well, as we find out in short time later, other people were watching the house, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
This starts the other goofy part of this movie. For the rest of the movie, we have to hear Tango asking Cash whether or not he banged his sister.
Yes. It's like, did you sleep with my sister? Did you bump uglies with my sister?
Did you bump uglies with my sister? Who asks that?
So the police captain, because everything that Tango and Cash find out in this movie, they have to be handed, because even though they're like brilliant police detectives, they never actually detect anything. The police captain guy tells them who Ponytail is and where they can find him.
Yes.
Now, you would think that after about 3 different iterations of them being told something or told where to go by someone that they trusted and it turning into a disaster area, they might not do it this time. But this guy is Tango's boss, so I guess it's okay. I don't know. But we cut to Kurt, and this is another thing that didn't make any sense. I assume he had to have gotten this from Q Branch, because Kurt Russell walks up to, they apparently know where this address is, or they go there. And we only see Cash, and Cash goes up to this apartment, and he pulls out from his pocket what looks like a bullet. But then he twists it, and a little lock-picking thing comes out, and then he picks the lock.
I want to address something in chat. Colleen B says it wasn't his sister's house. It was technically his house, but he rented it out to his sister.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So he pulls out this little bullet lockpick thing, which it always kind of confused me. And then Ponytail gets the drop on him with a MAC-10 Uzi, or a mini Uzi. And all of a sudden, then a gun comes up from behind Ponytail's head, and it's Tango. And they've trapped him. And then we cut to Ponytail being hung off the side of the roof by Tango and Cash. And he's mocking them, because he's like, all right, you do what you want. I kind of like it up here. It's fine. Yeah. Doing his,
that's also the scene where he breaks his accent.
Yes, it is.
He did a good job for most of it, but there's one specific part where he's definitely American.
Right.
But yeah, they're holding him. And it's great because one of them is holding, each of them is holding one of his legs.
Yes.
And Sylvester Stallone isn't having any real trouble at all. And Cash is just struggling.
Yeah, it is.
And so they decide, yeah, this isn't working out. So they pull him up and they go to plan B.
Plan B.
And the scene cuts and we see him tied to a television antenna thingy.
Yeah.
With a grenade taped around his mouth.
Yeah, the grenade's been taped in, like, basically his mouth's been opened a little bit. The grenade's been sort of shoved in there, and it's been taped to his head. And then Tango and Cash start doing this, to me, a completely transparent, quote unquote, good cop, bad cop routine.
Yeah.
Trying to intimidate him.
Which works, because he pees himself. Works.
Yeah, because he pees himself and he gives up the information. He's like, Peret's the governor. Oh yeah, where's the governor?
Yeah.
It's just and then he tells him that he's out at like some old like, I forget what he'd call it, but some sort of like old place out in the desert.
Yeah, yeah.
Like some old like airport, not the airline graveyard. That's Darlington's in the Marlboro Man. Some place out in the desert. And then he finds out the grenade was a dud.
And this is another part of the movie that really drove me nuts, is that they just they left him taped there.
Yes.
He's not handcuffed. He's not in police custody. They just leave him taped.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. He's never going to come back again, guys. No, never.
No, never.
And then we immediately cut to the RV from hell.
The RV.
Care to join me?
This thing is so ridiculous.
it's so. I mean, do you remember the video game from the NES, Blaster Master? Master Blaster. So the entire game, you've got a 2 perspective thing. You're either in your giant off-road tank car, or you've got like a sort of like overhead perspective running around. Whenever I saw that car, the first thing I thought of was Master Blaster. It's just, anyway. Just for me, just because I'm a nerd.
To me, I saw A-Team. Because they always made, the ridiculous cars.
Yeah, if the A-Team had a budget. Yeah.
And they get this car from Q, whatever his name was in the movie.
Owen. And this is like some super duper souped up like Ford Bronco made into like combat car with a giant chain, like a rotating minigun on the side of it, and like armor proof. I mean, just imagine like the most ridiculous action movie supercar you can think of, and this is that car.
And Owen's begging them not to take it.
Yeah, he's like, it's a prototype, guys. You know, it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why else I'm showing it to you, even though, you know, that made no sense, but whatever.
No. The only reason they did that was to make his lines later funny.
It's true. And it's like, guys, you're not gonna put a scratch on it, right, guys?
We're insured. Yeah,
we're insured.
We're fully insured.
Fully insured. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess it's okay.
So they take the supercar
with
a minigun strapped to the side.
Somehow they get from downtown Los Angeles in this thing out to the desert without being stopped by anybody.
Yes, nobody calls the cops on the. Yeah, so they get out there, and this is one of those scenes that I actually thought of you when I watched it this morning.
Oh, really?
You talk about in movies where there's scenes where you don't earn it.
Yes,
and they're going into the desert, and they stop so that they can spy on what's going on, so they can look, and they have a little exchange there. And Sylvester Stallone says to Kurt Russell, he goes, I want you to know, if one of us doesn't make this out, you're the best cop I ever worked with.
Right.
And at this point, they really haven't worked together. No,
they haven't really done any work together. I mean, if the line had been something like, it's like, if it had been something like, I used to really despise you, but you've had my back the whole time, so thank you. If it's been something like that, I would be like, okay.
Yeah. Or if that line came after what we're about to get through, it would make more sense.
Yes, to a certain extent, yes.
But at that point in the movie, it really didn't make much sense. However, Kurt Russell's line, Cash's line here is
so good.
Awesome.
It's so good.
I just want to let you know that if you don't make it out, I'm going to date your sister. Like, that is fucking beautiful.
I am going to date your sister.
It was so awesome.
Oh, God, yeah, Kurt Russell just nails this character.
He did so well in this movie. He really did.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this movie would have done better if Stallone hadn't been in it.
Well, we'll get to that in the production. There's something else. There's a bit of trivia that you don't know that we'll get to.
Okay, well, the reason I say that is because, again, even in this scene here, Sylvester Stallone nailed his line. He did it very well.
Yes, he did.
But anytime there's an action sequence, he just falls to shit. It's so bad.
Yeah, it really makes me think that maybe Stallone is how some actors, they only act if they have a really good director.
Yeah.
I think Stallone only does action if he has a really good action director. And as we'll see, the direction of this movie, the person or persons that directed this movie, that's not necessarily their genre, but we'll get to that too.
Now comes the absolute ridiculousness that makes Tango and Cash so great.
Oh, yes. This is awesome.
So they decide, okay, we're going to penetrate this bunker.
Super base.
The super base, yeah.
It's a super evil fortress. Let's just be honest. It's a super evil bad guy fortress in the middle of the desert, which has no purpose. I mean, there's all this stuff, but we don't know why it's there or what they're doing, but it's just there.
Yeah, he's just got this giant, and we'll get to some of the stuff. The scene starts out with them driving towards the gate, and they're wondering whether or not it's fortified. Now, earlier when they first got the RV, Owen tells them this thing could drive through a brick wall.
Yes.
And they're worried about going through a chain link fence.
Yes.
Which was kind of ridiculous, but they punched through it. And this is the first of the really asinine things that happens in this sequence, but it's beautiful. They go crashing through the gate. And when they first start this scene, we're seeing it from behind the RV as it's going towards the gate.
Yes.
They hit the gate and it immediately switches to the other side. We're looking at it from inside the gate.
Yes.
And for some reason, they are elevated.
Yes.
They are jumping through the gate.
Yeah, there's no ramp there at all, guys.
No.
There's no ramp that made that little bottom part of the gate safe from their crashing in. No.
And yeah, this vehicle's at least 3 feet in the air when it comes through this gate. It's fucking retarded. And they get through the gate, and it cuts to Jack Palance just giggling at his screens as he's watching what's going on. And suddenly all of these vehicles start pouring out.
Including a monster truck.
Monster truck, yes.
I mean, there are vehicles there that would make sense for like an excavation project. You've got like really giant earth-moving vehicles, and these become important later. But amongst all of this, there's a monster truck chasing them.
Wait, all of the vehicles chasing them have guns on them.
Yes. And
Mounted.
there is, and I don't even mean a small army, there is an army of individuals, security people, shooting at them.
Yes.
I mean, an absolute, like, we're not talking like a couple of rent-a-cops or something, or like some really elite hitmen. Like, there's dozens and dozens of guys in black outfits with giant machine guns shooting at them. They knew they were coming. It's just like,
yeah, and they're firing rockets at them from these vehicles that are following. The crappy vehicles following them are more high tech than Owen's vehicle. So they drive around in circles, and here's the callback.
Yep.
Sylvester's, is it Tango who says it?
I believe so. Yes.
He says, "Oh, this is a maze."
Yes, and so here's our 2 rats in a maze. So somehow, even though Perret's plan was to frame them, put them in prison, and then have them die in prison, for some reason, at the beginning of the movie, he puts rats in a maze, and at the end of the movie, he's constructed this giant base that was never intended to be something that they came to as a maze for them to be lost in.
Yes.
It doesn't. Anyway.
So they're driving all around, and magically, just by driving, and Sylvester Stallone shoots at a few people. The minigun is going off, and there's actually a gun mounted under the passenger side on the front window of it.
Right.
All of these guns are firing. Even though they're being chased, they're firing forward.
It's great.
Just by driving in circles, they managed to make everybody else crash and burn.
Yes, exactly.
And they're like, we're done. And suddenly these 2 giant earth-moving vehicles appear next to them.
Yeah, and bookend them on either side.
And they decide, we got to get out of this. And so here's another part that just made me go, what the fuck is going on? They're getting out of the vehicle, and Cash says to Tango, I need a gun. So he came to this with no gun.
Right.
I was like, what did you think you were going to do? So they both managed to get out of the vehicle.
Hold on. You missed the line. You missed the line. Tango hands him a 38 snub nose while Tango's holding this giant super future gun. And Cash says, why is yours bigger than mine? And Tango says, genetics. Pee-wee. Calling back to the shower, and then they get out of the supercar, and then they take over the 2 giant earth movers.
Yes. And there's another part right here that just drives me nuts, because they bring the 2 vehicles, the 2 earth moving vehicles, in front of the giant warehouse / bad guy base.
Yeah, bad guy base.
And you see a couple of guards in front of them walking with their guns. Nobody pays attention to them.
Right.
And
the whole time, our supervillain and his 2 henchmen, Quan and Lopez, are up there in the TV room, and they're like, oh, they don't know what they've got coming for them or whatever. And they look all confident, like they got their guns, and they're just, and like, did you just see what was on that TV screen?
Yeah, no shit.
And so, anyway. This
is actually the part that I liked about Jack Palance in this movie is him sitting there laughing at the screen through all of this.
Yeah.
Get him.
And he's like, yes. and just imagine filming Jack Palance like this day. He's like, you have this old man sitting there in a chair, just screaming at televisions.
Yes, it was awesome.
I mean, this guy was in Shane, for God's sakes. He was the man in black in Shane. And you got him sitting there yelling at TVs, is like, yeah, get him.
Yeah, it was just so ridiculous.
I'm also thinking of, and honestly, as I'm watching that today, I was thinking of, you've seen Ed Wood, haven't you?
I have not, no.
Oh God, there's this scene where they recreate the movie Glenn or Glenda, and they're filming scenes for Bela Lugosi, and they're just filming Bela Lugosi, an old man sitting in a chair, and Bela Lugosi just suddenly decides to ad-lib, and he gets all really dramatic, and he just goes, pull the strings, and it's just I'm just thinking about what this must have been like in real life. But anyway, they crash through the front doors, they get out, they have their guns ready.
Wait. There's something that needs to be brought up here.
Yeah.
As they crash through, we see where there's a camera inside the warehouse.
Yes.
And you see all of these boxes labeled U.S. Marines.
Oh, right.
And as they come crashing through, they crash through these boxes, which are absolutely empty. Nothing at all falls out of it.
Right.
But
which is never explained. It's like never explained.
No.
Like, why are they there? What was going on? What?
I
thought this was a drug operation, not a weapons operation.
Yeah. Well, you do see them as they run into everything. There's tables full of weapons all over the place.
Well, yeah, but this is supposed to be like cocaine or something, because that was the whole thing. He was always like, "You're always taking my drugs."
Taking my drugs. Well, you gotta have firepower too.
For that army, yeah, I suppose you would. But then the silliest. I mean, one of the for a silly movie, this is the silliest. A self-destruct sequence happens like we're on a spaceship or something.
They have the whole place wired with a self-destruct sequence.
With an 11-minute timer.
God.
And the bad guys are at the center of this place.
It's a 12-minute timer.
Oh, sorry. Was it 12 minutes? Okay.
Yes.
That makes a big difference.
It does, because it gives them one more minute to do what they need to do. So they grab some weapons.
Yep.
Which was smart. But the dumb part here is only Tango grabs an extra clip. Because later Ray has to ask him for it. Or Cash has to ask him.
Cash has to.
But yeah, so they grab weapons. Only Sylvester Stallone thinks about bringing more ammunition.
Yep.
And they start making their way up to the bad guy's lair.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know how to address the rest of this.
I know the series of events, if that helps.
I'm fairly sure I still remember them.
Okay.
Because they make it up to the top, and the first person they run into is Ponytail.
Yes.
Who has Terry Hatcher.
Yes. They have the sister.
With a grenade taped to her neck.
Yep.
And he's holding a knife to her neck and makes both Tango and Cash drop their weapons.
Yes.
And from out of nowhere.
Yes, out of nowhere.
There is a new character introduced.
And the guy actually says, Ponytail actually says, "You haven't met my friend yet, but he certainly wants to meet you," or something. And then they start having kung fu fights.
Yes, they do. And there's a whole sequence of this guy jumping and breaking glass with his feet. That's mostly what the fight boils down to.
Yeah.
And again, we see it, and you have Tango and Cash with no guns, and instead of shooting them and killing them, they decide to have a fist fight.
Yeah.
Ponytail. Well, not necessarily. Ponytail is using his razor blade.
Yes.
So there's a fight back and forth. Sylvester Stallone fights the new guy, bad guy X. Them introducing it, I was like, "What in the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, it's like, "You haven't met my friend yet." Like, of course we haven't. He was written into the movie 2 seconds ago.
You literally brought him in so there was 2 people to fight. That's it.
Yeah. You could have introduced like Ponytail and his friend earlier or something. No.
So they have their fight. Kurt Russell ends up getting the best of Ponytail and sticking a live grenade down his pants this time, pushing him down a stairwell. Yep. And this was actually a really cool sequence. You see him hit the bottom of the stairwell and then the explosion. There's no cutaway here.
So there was a cut, but it was very well done because they cut away from him. You have to watch it, but it is so split second and well put together that you don't even notice it.
Yeah, it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I forget how Sylvester Stallone gets the best of.
I don't remember, honestly. I think he just knocked him out or something.
I remember him punching him really, really hard.
Yeah. So
bad guy X goes away too.
Now remember, during this entire time, the self-destruct countdown is still going.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so Ponytail, bad guy X, and our 3 main villains are still inside this building. I would have expected the running to the helicopter to escape scene.
Yeah.
Because that would be the 80s thing. But no, at no point do any of the bad guys try to escape the death trap that is currently going on around them.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
It is possible they had an abort button.
It's possible.
But I had the same thought as you, is why the fuck did they stay there?
But here's the even more ridiculous thing. So after they take out 2 minor guys and they freed the sister, they run up to the last level. I mean, it's like a video game. They're getting up to the last level. And the 2 minor bad guys, Quan and Lopez, are there by themselves in different rooms with guns.
Yes.
And they just get blown away. Like we see Quan walk up to the door, he's just dead.
When Lopez gets killed, it's because Kurt Russell is firing blindly into a wall.
Right. It's just he's firing through the stairwell wall upwards into the guy, and they don't quite kill him because he stands back up again before he has to shoot him to It's so stupid.
It was Quan who stands back up.
Was it? I thought it was Lopez.
Yes, Quan's the one who comes back up, and Kurt Russell has to jump in front of him. He ends up getting shot, taking a bullet for Ray.
Right. He's shot in the arm. It's a through and through. It's not dangerous. Then why did you even have him shot? Let's see.
So then, yeah, they dispense with those 2 really fast, and we come to the climax of the film. They finally meet this guy who they didn't even know existed.
Yes,
he's such a sinister motherfucker.
Oh, actually, I take it back. Quan and Lopez died before the kung fu fight.
Did they really?
Yeah, no, I have it written down here. Quan dead, Lopez dead.
That's how fucked up their characters are. Is that they were dispatched before them?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I wrote this stuff down in sequence. Yeah. So anyway, so then they get to the last guy, and somehow Perrette has the sister again.
Yes.
And where is Perrette?
He is in a room of mirrors. Why the fuck does he have a room of mirrors?
Yeah, so there's this little alcove that's just all lined with mirrors, and you just see multiple, iterations of Jack Palance holding Terry Hatcher with a gun to her head, and Tango and Cash are standing there, and the countdown's still going on. Yes. We're reaching the moment, and so apparently our main villain had no escape plan, because as far as I can tell, there's only one way in and out of this room.
Maybe the mirrors would have protected him.
So, as with the beginning of the movie where we had the assassin jump through a mirror, we're going to end the movie with mirrors. And so they're both like, we got to kill him because he's got nowhere to go. I mean, if he kills Terry Hatcher, he has nowhere to go. And so what happens?
There's a great line here. They both say they're going to take him alive and they're going to shoot for his knee.
Right.
And they pull their triggers.
Well, so Tango uses his gun, and then Cash jumps backwards and uses his boot bullets.
Yes.
That's great.
And both of them hit him right in the forehead.
In the forehead.
And all of the mirrors shatter. They have a little exchange. My sights must be off. Then they both go get Terry, and they get her up, and they're running out of the building. And they have enough time to get down all the flights of stairs and get a good distance away from the building.
There was 20 seconds. There was 20 seconds left when they ran out of the room.
They're fast as fuck, man.
I guess, but they also had. They had the 20 seconds. They run out. It's the same old action thing. They get out, and just as they get past, kaboom!
Which actually leads to one of my other points that I have a really bad problem with this movie.
Yeah.
So after it blows up, they have a little talk, of course, like they do. And for the first time, they actually embrace each other as, friends. They do the hand clasp above Terry Hatcher.
Wait, there's one which was there's one thing they said before that. They were like, "How'd you know which one was the real Perrette?"
Oh yeah.
And the Cash says monogram, and Tango says the ring, and Tango's like, monogram? He's like, yeah, it was the right way. It was reversed in all the other mirrors, which doesn't make any sense because that's not how reflections work in a multiple mirrored room. Anyway, and then Tango says, oh yeah, the ring was on the wrong hand. I'm like, how do you know that? You never saw this guy. He was in shadows at this point. You've never seen him before.
Now, what he could have meant with that is that in all of the other ones, it was on the other hand.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
But even still, I mean,
anyway, but then the Eiffel Tower, Terry Hatcher.
And he does it with the arm he's been shot in.
I know.
was like, are you fucking kidding me?
And then it cuts to from that
a still frame.
A still frame of them clasping hands, and then it pulls back, and it's a newspaper photograph of them, you know, heroes again, the headline says, and, you know, vindicated or proved innocent or whatever. Yeah. And then we're immediately done with the movie, and we get to synthesizer rock music.
Now, I want to address Adrian Bloom says, come on, Monkey, it's an awesome movie. I fucking love this movie. I do. Yeah. This is an 80s movie, and if you like 80s movies, this is a perfect 80s movie.
By all means.
It is so bad in so many parts, but it's still so good as a whole. Yeah, overall, I fucking love this movie. I really do. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. Now, even though we've described it and spoiled it, first of all, this movie's been out for what? Almost 25 years now?
At least, yeah.
It's still a fucking excellent movie. Go watch it. You can get it at Walmart in a bundle with some other great movies. You can also get it individually if you look around, but definitely watch it.
Now, I want to give, just before we wrap this up, because we're probably coming up on the end here, I want to give a little background on the production, because there are some reasons why a lot of things are as disjointed as they were in this movie. And specifically, Monkey, your reaction to where we go from, because basically the scene with the RV is sort of like, this is the cutoff point between sort of understandable 80s action movie and completely bonkers 80s action movie.
What the hell is
and there's a reason for that. So I'm gonna read from the Wikipedia article. I know Wikipedia, but I'm lazy. What can I tell you? Production was beset with problems from the beginning. First, Patrick Swayze, who was originally cast as Cash, dropped out to go star in Roadhouse, which was probably a decent career move for him. Then principal photography began without a completed script. Sylvester Stallone had the original director of photography, Barry Sonnenfeld, fired. Barry Sonnenfeld, who would go on to direct movies like Men in Black. Donald E. Thorin, who had shot Stallone's movie Lockup earlier in the year, was Sonnenfeld's replacement. Then, after nearly 3 months of filming, director Andrei Konchalovsky was fired by producer John Peters in a dispute over the movie's ending, and was replaced with Albert Magnoli, who filmed all the chase and fight scenes in the ending. Reportedly, executive producer Peter McDonald, who was also one of the film's second unit directors, took over directing the movie before Magnoli was brought in. A year earlier, McDonald had stepped in as a director on Stallone's previous movie, Rambo 3. So this is all sort of like a weird trying to patch up a leaking ship with your friends and neighbors kind of deal. So
for me, I mean, the end of this movie still works within this movie, because to me, it's very much like Scream. It's almost if this was made today, I would swear it was a parody of 80s action movies.
Right. Well, here's the thing, and you're on point again. Another reason why Konchalovsky was fired was his refusal to agree with what he referred to as the increasingly insane demands that Peters had. Konchalovsky said that he was initially hired to make a buddy cop movie with plenty of humor, but Peters basically wanted to turn it into a spoof without any semblance of seriousness, and Konchalovsky refused. Essentially, Konchalovsky argued that they were simply trying to make two different movies, and when Peters realized his inability to bend Konchalovsky to his will, he fired him. According to supporting actor Brian James, who played Ponytail, the film was in disarray from the very beginning, and by the halfway point of the shoot, when the film was several months behind schedule, Peters and Konchalovsky were no longer speaking. James agreed that the official reason Konchalovsky was fired was because of the budget, but he also said that going over budget was not Konchalovsky's fault, and that Konchalovsky did not deserve to be fired. Konchalovsky, however, had nothing but praise for Sylvester Stallone, and both he and James said that despite Stallone's ego and decision to fire the original cinematographer, and the fact that he had a hand in Konchalovsky's firing, Stallone was the one person who held the project together, and that he was a constant voice of reason, which also surprises the hell out of me. Now, Konchalovsky, for just reference on what kind of films this guy was doing before this. So before Tango and Cash, he did things like Uncle Vanya, A Lover's Romance, Maria's Lovers, Duet for One. I mean, these are like dramas and things, and like love stories. As far as I can tell, this was his very first action film. and you only see half of his work, I guess.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it being a little bit over the top and spoof. I think that's what made it work, and it separates it from so many others. Mm-hmm. But it definitely is. You definitely get the two different movie feel.
Yes, you do.
For me, I actually noticed it right after the prison, but definitely after they get the RV.
Yeah, the RV always marked for me like the point of no return for sanity in the whole movie, because that's where it turned into a complete video game for me. Even when I was a kid, I was kind of like, this is a weird sudden turn, because I mean, we weren't exactly in gritty seriousness land to this point, but we certainly weren't into comic book territory.
Yeah, and that final scene is definitely comic book material. It's just so, the fact that the bad guys would set off a timer and not try to leave.
I know, it's just, and like I say, Jack Palance I swear to God, he did 2 days of filming at most, or only 2 days worth of his filming ever made it into the movie, because the bad guys made no sense. I guess they didn't have to, for the sake of the fact this is more of just, Tango and Cash running around together. But I never understood who these bad guys were, why they were doing what they were doing, why they had a suicide pact.
We're just going to kill ourselves.
But yeah, Kurt Russell's my favorite part of the whole movie. Just about everything he did, even the really cheese stuff, he was great, because he's so much more a natural actor. Yeah. Sylvester Stallone seemed to be doing a screen test for himself for the movie Oscar he would do a couple of years later, just by the look of him and the suits and everything, and trying to do actual acting. And seeing all the people that I now recognize as actors or things that they've done elsewise since then and all that was always fun this morning. But I still love this movie. It's just such fun to watch, because you accept, having watched it so many times before, I just accept it's insane and just love it for the things that, and still some of the one-liners have stuck with me my entire life.
Oh, it's absolutely great. I didn't find as many one-liners awesome. A lot of them seemed forced because they were coming from Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Again, I wonder if this movie would have just done so much better if he hadn't been in it.
Yeah.
And that's not I didn't know about the production issues, and good for him for being the one that was able to keep it together. But
yeah,
his acting, like I said, the scene with him and his sister when they're at her house,
mm-hmm.
and he's getting dressed, she tells him, wear the blue suit. He goes, I'll wear the blue suit.
Mm-hmm.
That is a really good scene.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And he comes off completely natural. But like the scene at the beginning, where he's making quips about like Rambo was a pussy, came off so cheesy.
Well, cheesy. This is where I'm wondering, like, I think and I have no idea which was filmed in what sequence or who did what, but the moments where Stallone is acting, I think he had direction.
Yeah.
I think he had direction from somebody that knows how to do actors, which the original director of this film, from his filmography, knows how to direct story and emotion and actors. So I'm wondering, so as I said before, some actors are only as good as the direction they're given. And so I'm wondering if it's just a matter of, who was giving Stallone direction in some scenes versus others. We'll never know for sure. But I also try to imagine, like, if Cash had been Patrick Swayze.
I don't think that I like Patrick Swayze. I loved Roadhouse. I don't think that would have been as good.
No, I don't think the chemistry would have been the same, because Kurt Russell is so much more playful than anything I've ever seen Patrick Swayze do. Because Swayze was an actor. Like, he was actually a really good actor, but he was also a bit too serious. Kurt Russell has that sort of playfulness to him that was a good foil for the character that Tango was supposed to be.
Yeah. Overall, though, really good movie. Recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it.
Yes.
But that's about all I have to say on it.
Yep, that's about all. You want to do any chat stuff, or do we just want to wrap it up? Because I know that we got other things to take care of before the 6 o'clock in my case, or 9 o'clock hour in your case, rolls around.
How about we save? If you guys have questions, hit us up on our like nightly live stream tonight.
Yeah, if you have questions about Tango and Cash or anything else, yeah, hit us up tonight. And we'll be on Monkey's channel again later tonight.
Yep, will be my channel, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yep.
Next week we'll be covering The Last Boy Scout, which I'm so jealous. I should have let you do this one and me take that one. That was such a good fucking movie.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun.
But we're going to be doing The Last Boy Scout next week on Scribe's channel. Do we want to shoot for the same time? Or
yeah, so barring something else coming up, let's just say next Sunday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and it'll be on my channel, and we'll cover The Last Boy Scout. And sometime between now and then, if we want to keep doing this every Sunday, we'll come up with another one to watch. Probably out of that same 5-pack, since I already have it.
Also, guys, if there's a movie you think that would be great for us to do, I'm at the moment thinking old movies.
Yeah, 80s, like 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there.
Hit us up in the comments section of this stream once we're done, and it'll be live, or live on the channel. So if there's ones you want us to see, Jesus God, if there's ones you would like to see us take a shot at, leave it there and we'll consider it.
Sure.
But otherwise, Scribe, pleasure as always. I love talking movies with you. It's so much fun.
Yep.
But we'll see you tonight at 9, guys.
Yep. Bye, guys. Take care.